This is World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment with your host, Carl Gruber. World Awakenings is a podcast dedicated to opening your mind, your heart, and your eyes to the fact that the world's population is now, more than ever, awakening to all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening, and just how they play an all-important role in our daily life. So join Carl on this enlightening experience as he interviews metaphysical and spiritual experts to discuss, debate, and delve deeply into the hows and whys of this worldwide awakening.
Ready.
Are you destined for global impact and financial sovereignty by becoming a certified life coach? Well, Renee Marcoux's iHeart Academy, accelerated life coaching certification program, and business training will help you get there. This is a 6-month immersion program where you'll learn signature strategies to create a life you're in love with. Plus, you'll learn unique holistic coaching methods so you can get your clients' results fast. It's time for you to break free from corporate servitude and stop trading your precious time for money. At the iHeart Academy Life Coaching Program, you'll trailblaze with the top purpose-driven coaches in the Coaches Lounge and quantum leap past any limitations that are currently holding you back. By the end of this program, you'll not only have deeper knowledge to create a booming life coaching business, but you'll be able to take your coaching expertise to a whole new level. Take the first step towards becoming a confident, embodied, impactful life coach with this fun, interactive program, Renee Marcoux's iHeart Academy Life Coaching Certification Program. Click on the link below now. Blessings to all of you, my friends, for joining me here today on my podcast, World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment. The incredible array of master teachers, experts, authors in the fields of spirituality, metaphysics, and all things enlightening continues to shine here on this show. And it's my hope that the light, love, and knowledge that my amazing guests have to share with you helps that light, love, and truth grow and expand within you. So thank you for being here with me today, and I ask that you please take a moment to click that subscribe button below to help keep the show going so that you never, ever miss a single episode of this show. So my guest on today's show is perhaps one of the best-known teachers in the world of the law of attraction, Dr. Joe Vitale. He hit bottom a few years earlier in his life as he experienced homelessness and poverty. That is until he discovered the power of his own thoughts to create the life he dreamed of. Now, having appeared in numerous movies, most notably the movie The Secret, and having authored at least 75 books on the law of attraction, spirituality, and how to create the dream life you desire, we're absolutely honored and humbled to have Dr. Joe Vitale on the show. Welcome, Joe.
I've been looking forward to this. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, you make me feel so good. That is just awesome. You know, I got to say this. You're a long way from Niles, Ohio, brother.
Yes, I am. Well, that's why I agreed to come on your show. You're a Buckeye, and I'm a Buckeye, at least originally. I was born and raised in Ohio, up in the Northeast in Niles, as you mentioned. And the fortunate thing about being born in Niles, if you've been there, you know this, they have one of the most beautiful, gigantic libraries anywhere in the state. And I grew up there and literally grew up in the library. I would walk there, study those books, and take them home and study them and read them and return them and get more. So Niles was a good place to be born and raised.
I didn't know that about Niles. Yeah, that is awesome. Yeah, now the library is right behind you.
Right. I got my own library now, but I'm very grateful for the Niles McKinley Library, named after William McKinley, 25th president of the United States, who was born and raised in Niles, Ohio.
Oh, okay, yeah. Boy, this is great. I got a good history lesson here. Plus, I grew up on the east side of Cleveland, and you and I are both from blue-collar country. So I have a feeling that attitude is carried with us through life. But, you started out as a writer, and after you went to Kent State University, right?
Well, I started out fumbling through life like most people. And my father had me working on the railroad as a laborer when I was 5 years old.
What?
So, yes, 5 years old. People think I made it up. No, it was 5 years old. I have photos.
Wow.
I'm all dressed up to go to work with my father, and I'm excited because I'm a little kid going to his work. I didn't know that he was going to put tools in my hands and actually show me how to swing a sledgehammer and use a pitchfork and work on the railroad tracks, as we were called Gandhi dancers.
Wow.
So when you say about the blue collar and there's a certain work style and ethic, it started early with me. And one of the reasons I have written 85 books is I know how to work and I'm not afraid of it. I don't like labor. I learned that when I was 5 years old and was reminded of it every time my father took me out into the elements, winters in Ohio to work. And I thought, I hate this. I want to write books. I want to live in a library. So I was motivated early, but I also learned how to work.
Wow. What a story. That is incredible. I'm surprised you didn't study library science at Kent State.
Never occurred to me. In those early years, I thought about being the next Harry Houdini. I was going to be a world famous magician. I even had the name Harry Excello. I thought I was going to be a heavyweight boxing champion of the world. Yeah. And I actually did work out like crazy, studied, read all of the boxers. And of course, that was long before I actually met Mike Tyson and George Foreman and Floyd Patterson, and realized it's a good thing I chose being an author when I was a kid, because they would have killed me.
Well, this is great. We're finding out things about Joe Vitale that maybe a lot of people didn't know. So. I've got to say, you've been, as so many people know, you've been featured in a number of movies, but it seems that most people first came upon you in the movie The Secret. Was that the rocket that launched you in the stratosphere of success?
No, not really. It was the second rocket. The first rocket was I had invented hypnotic writing, hypnotic marketing, and hypnotic publicity. My first book was in 1984, and it came and went. The publisher didn't know anything about marketing, and I learned that I needed to learn marketing. So I deep dived into marketing, copywriting, publicity, because my first client was me. I wanted to learn how to market myself and my books because I wanted to make a living as an author. And as I was doing it, I invented things like hypnotic writing and hypnotic marketing and wrote books on those things. I was becoming pretty well known for those items. I was living in Houston, Texas then. I was getting a name for myself. Oh, he's the hypnotic writer. He's the hypnotic copywriter. If you want some marketing done, hire Joe. And then it was about the same time that the internet started to show up. Nobody knew what it was. Nobody knew what to do on it. And I was considered one of the early pioneers because I went on the internet. I even wrote a famous story because NASA invited me to come and have a tour of the internet on their computers. I was writing an article for a business magazine. Again, I was doing marketing. And I went to NASA. I saw what they thought was going to be golden cyberspace. And I came back and wrote an article that is now famous because I was so wrong. And I said, you cannot make money online.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Because based on what NASA showed me, it was like they were showing me maps of the weather on the planet. And the weather is notoriously wrong. The people that report the weather are still wrong today with all the gadgets and apps and technology that they have. And I thought, if I want to know the weather, I'll just look out the window. So I wrote that article, but I was getting a name for myself online. And people who have known me way before The Secret know me as a marketer, as a copywriter, and as a hypnotic writer. So I was gaining some fame in that area before The Secret came out.
Well, that's interesting, too, because, both of us being from Ohio, and I told you before we came on, I spent 20 years plus years in radio as a disc jockey, but I was also a copywriter and a production director. So I understand the hypnotic, to be persuasive and draw the customer in. So this is something I've got to have. And it is a real thing. And you honed your writing with that.
I would attribute all of my success in all the different areas. I'm a musician at this point. I have 15 albums. I've been in 20 or more movies besides The Secret. I have my own TV show that has been airing on 1,000 platforms all over the world now. I traveled to countries I never thought I would go to all around the world. I would attribute all of my successes to copywriting. I have learned how to write. I have learned how to speak. And I did all of it with the idea that a copywriter has to think of the other person. What most people do is think of themselves when they communicate, whether they put up a website, it's all about themselves, or whether they send a sales letter out, or they get on stage. I learned that I have to think of the other person. I can talk about myself, but it better be in a way that's interesting to them. And I did it everywhere, even when I was in the movie The Secret. I still remember being invited. I still remember being in a hotel room in Chicago with cameras on me, not knowing that this was going to become a world phenomenon, and them asking questions. My answers were spoken in the style of a copywriter.
Yeah.
So I would think, and even today, that my ability to speak, to tell stories, to write, that all came from hypnotic writing and copywriting.
And having been a copywriter myself, and I do writing quite a bit myself, it gives you the understanding of a formula of writing in an organized manner in which, and yes, it does make you objective and think of sitting in the reader's mind and eyes. Yeah.
It's pure Dale Carnegie, actually. Dale Carnegie wrote one of the greatest books of all time, How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's a masterpiece. I've read it several times. I wish I had written it. But he chiseled his words, and he made it very clear that everybody is interested in one thing, themselves. Mm-hmm. And if you can speak to their interest, they'll listen to you. And that's what I had to learn, and that's what I had to apply. And again, I've done it in those early days with marketing. And then when I was invited to be in the movie, because that was the next big wave, 2006 comes along, The Secret comes out. I'm put on Larry King. I'm put it, Oprah does pretty much 3 infomercials on The Secret, and The Secret hasn't stopped yet. And it was in 2006 that it came out. That shot me into orbit. Mm-hmm. I might have had a name as an internet marketer and copywriter and so forth, and pretty well respected, I think. But when the movie The Secret came out, it put me in a different category. Now I'm the self-help teacher. And as I wrote more books, became more of a spiritual teacher. And it's pretty rare for people to know the history going all the way back to 30 years to figure out that, he was also a copywriter, a marketer.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm so glad that you mentioned Larry King, because I did want to ask that. There used to be this very, very famous talk show host. You don't see shows like this on network TV anymore. Larry King interviewed people of interest from around all different aspects of interest. And you were on that show with Larry King. I may have been on CNN, but what was that interview with Larry pivotal also in your career?
I was on his show twice. The very first time was with Jack Canfield and John Asseroff and a few others. There was a bunch of us. The second time it was just me. Mm-hmm. And there's no denying that a show that was that famous and that well watched was going to propel me even further into the consciousness of the public. So definitely being on those shows, but my God, there was a whole... I spoke at conventions with Donald Trump wasn't president back then. We never knew he would be. But way back then, like 2007, Donald Trump was on the same stage with me. Oh, wow. And Tony Robbins was on the same stage with me and a bunch of other ones. We were doing these Learning Annex wealth weekends all around the country. And I started getting speaking engagements. I went to Russia twice. I went to the Ukraine twice. One of the last countries I went to before the pandemic was Iran, which I never in my life thought I would go to Iran. And I've been to Kuwait. I went to places that in many ways were unnerving because we've been at war. The U.S. has been at war with a lot of them at different times. So all of these things have added to a movement that's almost indescribable in pushing my career and my name out into the world. The Secret started it in the big way, no doubt about it. The Secret did. But there's 24 teachers in The Secret. And for whatever reason, 5 or 6 are the ones people talk about the most. You know, they talk about Jack Canfield, they talk about Bob Proctor, they talk about John Asseroff, they talk about Lisa Nichols, and they talk about me. I don't know why, but there you go.
It's a personal magnetism. That's it. And you've been to all those places. I've been to Pittsburgh.
It's interesting. I've been to all of these places. You know, the sad thing is 3 of the last places I were at, I mentioned Iran, was the Ukraine and Russia.
Yeah.
And I have friends in both places. And then to hear that Russia invaded and still is bombing Ukraine, it's appalling. It's unbelievable. It is indescribable. My speaking agent still lives in Ukraine.
Ooh,
he was calling and leaving messages, and there was one that he was crying. He was hiding his family. And Lisa, my partner, Lisa Winston, and I were listening to it, and there were tears coming down our face, thinking, how is this going on in this time, in this place? I thought we were more awakened. I thought we were further down the evolutionary path. And apparently, no, we need more of the light workers out there. We need more of you and your audience going out there or internally cleansing ourselves so we can make an impact in the outer world, because we're not done with the mess that's out there. And Ukraine, what's going on over there is evidence of it right now.
That is an absolutely beautiful way of putting it. And I've spoken to many people that the light workers of the world now, with the craziness of everything going on, we've had to raise our game. And it's raising the energy and the light of the world. So despite the chaos, there is a lot more positivity going on. And, you know, I want to talk more about, I've heard that you state that your mission is to inspire people to go for and achieve their dreams, and everything that you do is in that direction of awakening people and dissolving their limiting beliefs, right?
You're absolutely correct, and I'm impressed that you did enough research to know that. But I feel it's my life mission to inspire people, but not just inspire them to go for and achieve their dreams. It's one thing to get them all excited, like at a pep rally for a football game, but it's another thing to get them all excited and they go home and do something. And that's what I'm more interested in. I want to inspire people to go and actually achieve whatever their life mission happens to be. And it can be big, it can be small, but each one of us has a contribution, a little piece of the puzzle that would help make the world work. So I think my piece of the puzzle is to light a fire under people and show them whatever ways that I have found or created that will help them attract what they want. That's what it's all about for me.
And thus the name Mr. Fire, which
that's true. There was a woman I knew back in Houston. She spontaneously started calling me Mr. Fire. And I said, why are you calling me Mr. Fire? She said, every time I get with you, you light a fire under me to go and write my book or do something. And when I see you with other people, you always light a fire under them. You're encouraging them. You're Mr. Fire. And so I put a website up called MrFire.com, and I let that be my moniker, and it's stayed all this time.
Well, you know, that is so awesome, because one of my personal mantras, my credo is ordinary people can accomplish extraordinary things.
Right. And
when you think about it, you know, we all think we're just ordinary, but we're really extraordinary. And you just jump on it and create a fire around it, everybody.
Well, we're actually super beings who have forgotten our power. And we can all understand why. I mean, we are born into the world and we're pretty much unconscious as we come in. And we start downloading everybody's programming, our parents first, then the very culture we're in. We do it without thinking because there's nothing to think about. We're just absorbing. And the school system, the media, the religion, I mean, it goes on and on and on. And then we get to a point like today and we go, how come I can't get what I want? How come I feel stuck? How come I'm unhappy? How come I feel unhealthy? How come I'm alone? And we don't realize pretty much we self-created it using our very powers that we've been unaware of. And when we can awaken in this moment and go, oh, wait a minute, maybe it was my beliefs. And when I change my beliefs, it'll cause me to take different actions. Those actions are going to have a little ripple effect in the world. And then there's all the mystical stuff that goes on, the woo-woo, if you will, that takes place when your own vibe goes out into the world and touches other people to attract them or repel them, depending on what you're doing, what you're wanting. And at that point, you start to awaken and you start to feel, oh, wait a minute, I am Superman or I am Superwoman, and you have more power than you ever thought before. I also, when I say all of this, remind people you're not God. You don't have total power. There's a part of you that still has to co-create with the bigger power, which I sometimes call the great something. Some people might call it God. Other people call it the divine. You can call it source, the universe, the field of all possibilities. There's all kind of words for this bigger energy field, but we don't control it. We can influence it, and we can be influenced by it. So I always want people to awaken to their natural superpowers without it becoming an ego trip and wanting to take over the world. Maybe like our buddy over in Russia is trying to do. Maybe he is he's trying to take over when it's actually an impossibility.
Well, you know, your life purpose is so beautiful, and we all have that purpose. We just have to allow it to blossom. And we're going to pursue this a lot more. Such great conversation. I just personally wanted to ask you this. We don't have to stay here very long, but you spent 10 years of your young life in poverty and experienced homelessness. How did you get to that point at that time, and what was the turning point back to the right path for you?
Well, it's actually a very good question because it does tie into what we're talking about. First of all, I decided after deciding not to be a magician and not to be a boxer and not to be all these other things, I decided I wanted to be an author. Yeah. And I began that quest. Now, that was not an easy quest, and I was doing it pretty much as a solitary experience. I'm very much an introvert. You can't tell it because I'm just exploding when I'm on camera. But for the most part, I'd rather be with these books back here. And during the years of being at Kent State University, I wrote plays, I wrote a novel, I wrote a book. I actually still have them. I found them in the garage. We've moved. I went through a divorce, all this stuff. And there's the box with all this stuff showing that I was trying when I was, in my 20s and in college. I didn't care about Kent State. I didn't care about those classes. There were a couple like American literature that I really did relish. For the most part, man, I was just partying and trying to make a career as an author and writing. Mm-hmm. As I'm doing all of that, Dallas, Texas was becoming a buzz town. There was the show Dallas on TV. Some people that are old enough would remember it. It was a major hit. And then the Dallas Cowboys, they were the hit of the sports world back then. And I would watch them. I'd watch the show. And I also wanted to be in a warmer climate. I was tired of shoveling snow and working in snow in Ohio. And so before I even graduated, I got on a bus and I went to Dallas, Texas. I had saved some money from working on the railroad in the summers and weekends, went there. I gave that money to a company that promised to get me work in either Alaska or the Middle East. Because at that point in the 70s, they were offering lots of money. I mean, it was like $70 an hour to go do labor on these pipelines. And I thought, this is my big plan. I was going to go and work on one of the pipelines. I didn't care if it was Alaska or in the Middle East, not then. And I would save my money. Then I'd come back and go on a sabbatical and write. And so I had this strategy. Well, I gave my money to the company, and the company went bankrupt. The company went bankrupt. Not only that, the person who owned the company committed suicide. And there's no internet back then. You can't go and find things very easily. And I was on my own. And it didn't take very long for me to be broke and homeless in Dallas, Texas. I mean, I get chills when I talk about this because I rarely talk about it at this level of detail. And so I end up being homeless and I feel like there's no recourse. I can't do anything. And I was severing my relationship with my family who was still in Ohio. And I thought, I'm not going back. I will die first. That's the ego. And that was the mentality I was having. I was going to pursue this dream right into the gutter, which is where I ended up. I lived in the Dallas Public Library, basically during the day, which was great. Books,
Yeah.
books, air conditioned, water, bathroom. Pretty much got that much covered, but still sleeping, outside in church pews, bus stops. All of it was pretty bad. I took a temporary job that sent me to Houston. And in Houston, I started to make enough money to be in a rundown little efficiency, but struggle in poverty for 10 years. During all of this time, I'm working on myself. I'm reading all the self-help books, especially in the Dallas Public Library. I sat in the self-improvement section on the floor, reading Think and Grow Rich and The Magic of Believing and Dale Carnegie and all the classics, the masterpieces. And as I'm reading all of this, I'm broke, I'm struggling, and I can't make sense of it. I can't get it to work for me. I don't have a coach. I don't have a mentor. There is no Facebook group. There is no support of any sort of that kind. And I kept trying to analyze myself, which is a tough thing to do. I now remember that the reoccurring theme in most of the books is that you were creating your own reality. And that's pretty tough to take when you are homeless or in poverty. It's like, how would I create this? Why would I create this? And then I had the aha, which is the turning point you were asking about. It's a big aha. I found that there was an unconscious operating belief. And I'm saying this slowly and almost theatrically because I want everybody watching or listening to reflect on themselves. Every one of us has an unconscious operating belief. That is the primary tree trunk that is causing a lot of our experiences to take place. For me, I realized that some of the authors I admired, like Jack London, he wrote Call of the Wild, Martin Eden, The Sea Wolf, 50 books. He had an adventurous life. He had a miserable life. He was an alcoholic. He died at the age of 40 as a suicide. He didn't make it past 40. One of the world's greatest authors. And Ernest Hemingway, who wrote true classics of American literature, took a shotgun to himself at the end of his life. In both of these cases, I unconsciously concluded in order for me to be as successful as Jack London or Ernest Hemingway, I have to have miserable experiences. So I was unconsciously creating them. When I woke up to go, wait a minute, I'm doing that because I think I have to have drama in my life like Jack London and Ernest Hemingway. What if I didn't? What if I found authors who were happy, healthy, well-adjusted, profitable, prolific, loved by the public, and healthy people with families and everything? And they're also writers. When I switched that belief and I switched that gear, I started to go in that direction. It still took a while for me to do it because I was doing all this by myself. There wasn't anybody encouraging me. There wasn't anything that would say, here's the evidence, you got to do it, Joe. So get up and do it. I'd have to get up every morning and look in the mirror and urge myself forward. So the short answer is bad investment left me penniless. The longer answer would be that the real turning point was realizing my beliefs, the unconscious beliefs, were creating my reality. When I consciously switched and chose different beliefs, I started to get a different reality.
Well, it doesn't matter how high on the ladder of success you are. I appreciate you taking time to digress and go back. And like you said, you may not talk about this, and I know it can be emotional, but thank you so much for sharing that with us. I know it's deeply personal. But
I'm also, I'm sharing it, hoping to inspire somebody. Yes. I'm hoping somebody's looking at this going, wait a minute, okay, I'm struggling in my life like right now. Why am I struggling? And search for the belief. Let a belief come up that could be the reason why you're struggling. A lot of creative people struggle because they think they have to in order to be creative. No, you don't have to. You can be happy. You can be productive. You can be creative without having trauma in your life.
Yeah, Mr. Fire lighting a fire under their butts. I like that. So, well, you teach, but you do teach that anyone can do the same thing you have, right? That's what we all want, but most of us, like you said, we have those unconscious paradigms of limitation.
What is true for one person is true for all people. We can find examples or be an example of the change we would like to see in the world. I feel that if I had to reduce everything down to a couple steps, I would say the very first one is to know what you want, to really look inside of yourself and say, what do I want? What do I want to express? What do I want to live? What do I want to have, do, or be? And not worry about how. How is the thing that trips everybody up, because we all want to know how. Forget how. You don't know how. The how will be created. What you do want to know is, what do I want? And then declare it. This is what I want. I wanted to be an author when I was a teenager. I said, I'm going to be an author. At that point, I said I wanted to write books that made people happy, because that was the term that I would have used. I don't think inspired would have been in my vocabulary as something that I would have owned. But happy, yes, because I wasn't happy. I assumed everybody else wasn't happy. And if I could write things that made them happy, I would be fulfilling a mission. So early on, I decided. The second thing to look at is, what do you hear in your head as soon as you declare it? Because that self-talk is going to reveal your limiting beliefs. Mm-hmm. That self-talk is going to say everything from, yeah, but I don't have the experience, or I'm too old, or I'm too young, or I don't have the education, or I don't have the connections, or I don't have, it's going to voice, your own self-talk is going to voice your limiting beliefs. Next thing to do is analyze those limiting beliefs, question them. If you've got somebody, I started miracles coaching years ago because I realize that you'll get better results if you have somebody to work with. So I created miracles coaching. But if you have somebody to sound this off with, you can do it, or you can write it out in paper. But the point is, look at those limiting beliefs, that self-talk, and question it. And ask yourself, is it true? Do I want to continue believing this? What would be better than this to believe? And then the next thing I would say in my little spontaneous formula here is you have to take action. That's the other thing that most people don't do. They watch a movie like The Secret and they think, oh, I just have to visualize it and it'll show up. Right. It might show up. But we live in a world where, as I mentioned earlier, you have to co-create reality. You do it with the great something. So you have to do your part, and the great something will do its part. And then together you will manifest what you want. And then the next and last thing that I will say here in our very quick little formula for creating your reality is, my secret to success can be summed up in one word: persistence. Just keep going. Just keep moving forward. Just keep acting, meditating, intending, visualizing. You get up every day and you keep on doing things. And then at some point, like me, age 68, turn around and look, I think somebody said I have 85 books that I've written. And I'm over in 20 some movies. I have 15 music albums. And I wasn't even a musician until I turned 60. So we can all achieve remarkable things that'll dazzle even the people that are doing them.
That reminds me, I saw a quote a couple years ago. I think it was actually Ohio State coach Woody Hayes. It says, persistence paralyzes resistance. Good old
well, I love that. I found that persistence wins out over luck, over talent, over connections, over money, over all the things people wish they would have. Most of the things we wish we would have are just excuses. Oh, I would do it if I had more money. Oh, bull. Sometimes you have more money and you still don't do it.
Right.
What you want to do is actually take action with what you have. One of my favorite quotes is from Theodore Roosevelt, who said, do what you can with what you have right where you are.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I just recently watched one of your videos as I was getting ready for our chat here. You state that you are not your thoughts, you're not your emotions, you're not your body. Could you elaborate on? Because that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I would love to. That's I post in videos on Instagram and Facebook every day. And so I would, first of all, invite people to follow me. I'm Dr. Joe Vitale on both places, Dr. Joe Vitale. And I'm doing my best to inspire people through 3-minute videos. And the one you're talking about is very, very important, because this moves us in the direction of an actual awakening. As we're sitting here, people listening, people watching are having thoughts. So I tell people, notice your thoughts. You're thinking. I'm thinking, you're thinking, we're all thinking. Well, notice that you're not your thoughts. You can observe them. You can report on them. You can write them down. You can speak them. You can tell me what they are. You're not your thoughts. This is a very important step. And then I'll say, well, you have feelings right now. You have emotions. Maybe you're sad. Maybe you're happy. Maybe you're grieving. Maybe you're embarrassed. Maybe you're angry. I don't know. There's any number of things that are going on that you're feeling right now. It could be confused. Whatever it is, notice you're not the emotion. You're having an emotion. You are experiencing an emotion. The emotion isn't you any more than your thoughts aren't you. That's the second insight. The third one is your physical body. How does it feel right now? I've been moving around in my chair. My back's a little tight, but I know I'm not my back. I'm not this physical body. Some days it might feel good. Some days it might not feel so great. And I'm just inside of it reporting. The body's almost like an astronaut suit. We got these little holes called eyes, and we can look out, but we're inside. And that's the third insight. So when we take all of this together, I ask people, if you're not your thoughts and you're not your emotions and you're not your body, what are you? And what I'm getting to is this witness to all of it is actually your spiritual soul. That's the God within you. That's divinity. And when you go inside, past the thinking, past the feeling, past the physical body, and you're inside kind of feeling it all and observing it all, in that place, it's the same in me. It's the same in you. It's the same in everybody. That's where we're connected. That is the source. That is zero, if you will, and everything stems from there. If you want a spiritual awakening, you want to focus more on the witness.
I was going to say, this is some deep spiritual ramifications, and I love it. A Course in Miracles states that I am not a body, I am free. I'm still as God created me. And, which when you're talking too, when you say you're not your thoughts, I remember in The Secret, your colleague, Mike Dooley, actually says thoughts are things. They're things, but you are not that thought. Is that right?
And that's exactly right, which is the good news, is just dealing with the thought world alone, is that you get to choose what thoughts you want to pay attention to. It seems the nature of the human experience is thoughts are going to bubble up. They're bubbling up from unconsciousness. They're bubbling up from any number of places and any number of reasons. But you, not being your thoughts, don't have to pay attention to them. Uncomfortable thought comes up, you can just say, okay, next. Or you can change it, you can direct it and go, I'm going to replace that thought, with the one that comes up that says, I don't feel so great right now. So, well, thank you for telling me that. Now I feel great. And we choose a different thought. Thoughts are things, and thoughts are not you. You are not your thought. There's a book out, I interviewed the author years ago. It's called You Are Not Your Brain. You are not your brain. And all of this, and that's from neuroscience, all of this is pointing in the direction that you are a spiritual entity inside the physical body having a physical experience. What most of us go through, though, is we get suckered into believing our thoughts because we think they're us, or believing our emotions because we think they're controlling us, or believing whatever's going on in the body because we think we're victim to it. And we have forgotten our superpower. One of the superpowers that we have is the ability to influence and control all of those things, the thoughts, the emotions, and the physical body, because you're the spiritual entity within it.
And I think people who first come to the law of attraction don't realize at first that if they stay with it, it's a natural evolution to flow right into the true nature of spirituality and your own divine superpower, as you call it. And I followed that path myself, and man, it's a beautiful ride, and I'm still evolving in it.
Well, aren't we all, myself included? But I wanted to point out that the movie The Secret was only a movie. Mm-hmm. A lot of people criticized it. I am so grateful for the movie. Whether I was in it or not, I would tell people to watch it. I think the movie was a wake up to pretty much the world in helping them realize you have more power than you ever thought before. And yet at the same time, the movie was only an introduction to a basic idea. It wasn't the graduate course in how to create your own reality. All it basically did was introduce you to something called the law of attraction. And even on that level, it didn't tell you everything you need to know. And so when people criticized it, it was like, give me a break. You're criticizing something that would be impossible to tell you everything you know. It's the first grade school level of an introduction to one of the basic spiritual principles, which is a principle of mind. There's a lot more. Be grateful for the movie and what it showed you, but don't stop there. Let's keep growing.
Wow. This is phenomenal. Thank you, Joe. This is amazing for this beautiful knowledge. One thing that I really, really want to talk to, because I have lived in Kona, Hawaii, is Ho'oponopono. And I know you've been a teacher of that and big proponent of. I know Dr. Lynn Hugh, who passed away, I think within the last year or two, was one of the key people in that. But the Hawaiian spiritual practice teaches 4 key phrases. I love you, thank you, I'm sorry, please forgive me. How did you come to it, and how do you understand how Ho'oponopono works?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because this is another example of going beyond the law of attraction, going beyond the secret, and going to the next level in spiritual growth and evolution. Because Ho'oponopono is teaching us how to work with the divine itself, with God, with the great something, with source, whatever you want to call it. I first heard about it probably around 2005. And I had a friend who said, did you hear the story of the therapist who helped heal an entire ward of mentally ill criminals in Hawaii? And he actually didn't even work with any of them. He did some sort of Hawaiian technique. And I heard it and dismissed it because it didn't sound very credible. But I heard it a couple more times and thought, well, if it's true, I need to know, because that technique could help me and it could help lots of other people. So I went on a quest. At that point, there was very little information online. I actually even hired a private investigator to help me find the therapist. And of course I did. His name was Dr. E. Haleakala Hulen. And Dr. Hulen deeply influenced me. I did a workshop with him. We hit it off. I did 3 workshops with him called Zero Limits 1, 2, and 3. We co-authored the first book called Zero Limits, which is the book that has taken the world by storm and introduced this to the masses. And I wrote 2 follow-up books, one 10 years later called At Zero. And then most recently, I wrote a book called The Fifth Phrase. And you are correct. There's 4 basic phrases. They're on my t-shirt. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. And bringing this all down into a very condensed, hopefully comprehensible explanation, what you're doing is noting what you're feeling. What you're feeling right now is inside of you. You may say it's because of somebody on the outside. You could say, my neighbor is upsetting me, my boss is upsetting me, my kids are upsetting me, the world is upsetting me, war is upsetting me. But you have to notice in Ho'oponopono that where you feel it is where you're going to change it. You don't feel any of those things outside. You feel them all inside. So you have to go inside yourself and note, okay, this is where I'm feeling the pain. Next thing you got to do is take full responsibility for it, which is another stumbling block for a lot of people, because they don't want to take responsibility. They want to blame kids, neighbors, war, anybody else but themselves. And it isn't about blame, but it is about responsibility. So you're feeling this. You're going inside yourself. You're taking responsibility. Okay, somehow I created it. I got it in me. Now I want to release it. And this is where you bring the basics of Ho'oponopono in, and you pretend internally that you're talking to your creator. And that could be different for each person listening, but I'll say the divine. We're talking to the divine, and we're basically saying, I'm sorry, please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. And you repeat it. I'm sorry, please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. And these 4 phrases are a kind of a magical formula, a spiritual combination lock that unlocks the feelings you have, and at the same time removes the beliefs. Ho'oponopono calls it data that's in your subconscious mind. And as that is removed, you'll note the outer world will change, but you're not doing it to change the outer world. You're doing it to change you. On a slightly more detailed explanation, when you're saying these 4 phrases, you're basically saying something along these lines. I'm sorry for whatever I or my ancestors believed or did to create this experience. Please forgive me for being unconscious to my beliefs. Please forgive my ancestors for whatever they believed that I might have downloaded in my life experience. Thank you for healing me, for healing them. Thank you for removing the limiting beliefs. Thank you for cleaning up the data. Thank you for making this problem, this perception, right again. I love you for my life. I love you for the process. I love you for my ancestors. I love you for whatever comes to mind. You can just keep saying, I love you. But you're saying this shorthand, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, as a kind of petition to request the divine to correct whatever is going on in your subconscious / unconscious mind that has created your perception that's causing the problem. As Dr. Hulen did this at the mental hospital for the criminally insane, they had already been trying sedating these people and shackling these people, and nothing was working. Dr. Hulen went there and he basically closed the door to his office and went inside himself. And as he thought of a patient, he was saying, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, to the divine. As he felt better, lo and behold, the patients started to get better. Within a few months, they were starting to be released. After, as he told me, after 4 years, the entire ward was closed.
Wow.
And so at this point, I've been doing it since 2005. I have heard the most amazing stories. Most of them I put in all the books, Zero Limits, At Zero, in the Fifth Phrase. So whatever anybody is going through, there's at least one way out of it. And that one way would be Ho'oponopono. And I've given people enough right now that they can go and do it without reading any of the books.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And it's interesting, having lived in Hawaii myself for a while. The history of Hawaiians is a warrior-like state, but yet their spiritual philosophy and teaching is very gentle and loving. And it's a beautiful synthesis of spirituality and the law of attraction. Hugh Lin's story is amazing, that without even working one-on-one with the patients, they got better just by doing that.
Yeah, it's one of the best stories. And it was the reason that brought me to it. It's the reason a lot of people check out Ho'oponopono. But once they actually check it out and start to apply it, that's when they really see the turning points. That's when they see stubborn issues are vanishing, or long-term problems are evaporating. They're being healed. They're being unraveled. So Ho'oponopono is incredibly powerful. And for me, I'm actually working on a movie about it. I was going to say what we need is a movie on Ho'oponopono, but we're in the process of creating a Zero Limits movie. And in fact, I think the website is zerolimitsmovie.com. If anybody is interested, if they already have experience with Ho'oponopono and they like to be considered to be in the movie, I think the website zerolimitsmovie.com. But my whole point is, the secret, all it did was introduce the law of attraction. And that was explosive around the world. That caused a ripple effect. That caused an awakening. But now we need to go to the next level. And Zero Limits / Ho'oponopono is one of the next steps in our evolutionary journey.
Wow. That is the best explanation on Ho'oponopono I've ever heard. And thank you.
Well, thank you.
I'm going to just for a moment to hop back to law of attraction. And I figured that you, as an author and who you are, would find this interesting. I recently had a literary consultant tell me, because I wrote a book about a law of attraction that I'm hopefully to get published here. And he thought the law of attraction is passé, or at least has been talked about so much that the public no longer has any interest in it. Your thoughts on that?
I don't agree. I can understand why they would say that, because with The Secret came a whole lot of people who wrote their versions of the law of attraction. Some people wrote versions of the law of attraction doesn't work, here's why. And other people wrote versions of here's why the law of attraction works and how to do it. And there's no end in sight to those books. I wrote a book back in 1998 on P.T. Barnum. And P.T. Barnum was the circus giant, but he was a lot more than the circus guy. And I wrote a book saying that. And the title of that book is There's a Customer Born Every Minute. Mm-hmm. And what I would tell you is there's a customer born every minute who has not heard of the law of attraction.
Right.
And so a fresh voice giving a fresh explanation or an unusual one or a humorous one, whatever your spin is going to be in your book, would be very welcome in the marketplace. So it's like I used to teach people in the 1990s how to write, publish, and promote their books. And a lot of people had ideas for different books. And I remember the one that always came up is somebody would have an idea for a cookbook. And they say, well, I want to come out with this cookbook, but there's already a cookbook. And I'm like, do you think there'll be more cookbooks next week and the week after? That was in the 1990s. There have been tens of thousands of more cookbooks, and they will always be more cookbooks because one of the favorite things of the human experience is food. We love to eat. And it's by the same token, it's the same thing with the law of attraction. We want to grow. We want to be more. We want to have more. And if somebody comes out with a book that is well written and clear, great stories, memorable, and truly helps people, they will buy it and they will tell other people about it, and it could stand the test of time. So just because there's a lot of books on the law of attraction, and I'm not even sure that there are, or there's a lot of cookbooks out there, I would not stop from coming out with your own, especially if you feel compelled from within. If you feel compelled, like it's the divine nudging you to do it, then the hell with everybody's opinions and come out with your book. Follow your guidance.
I love it. All this talk about cookbooks and the law of attraction, I think I'm going to manifest a pizza in a little while.
I will come join you.
All right. I hope you like pepperoni. That's it.
I do.
I'm going to, you've written now you said 85 books. Oh my God. Are there any of those titles that you are most proud of?
That's an excellent question. The question I sometimes get is, which is my favorite book? And it's like, I can't answer that. That's like having 85 kids and saying, who's your favorite? But books that I'm proud of, from the business side, there's a Customer Born Every Minute is my book on P.T. Barnum, and it has 10 different things that people can do in business. And he was actually a very spiritual man and practiced a lot of things that most people don't know about. So I would say there's a Customer Born Every Minute is a very respectful and useful, practical book about Barnum that anybody could use today. Plus, I think it's a very entertaining read because of all the colorful stories. And I talk about the Barnum-like characters, whether that's Branson or Houdini or any of the people who have done colorful things. My book, The Attractor Factor, that was the book that got me invited into The Secret. Rhonda Byrne read The Attractor Factor, which is about the law of attraction, and said, I want you to be in my movie. And The Attractor Factor, I keep hearing, has helped more people than just about anything else I have written or done. The Zero Limits book that I mentioned was the book that introduced Ho'oponopono to the world. And I will tell you, that is probably the only book of mine I've ever reread. I've reread it, and I'll tell you why. I felt like I channeled it. I wrote that book in 2 weeks. Wow. 2 weeks. I sat down and it just started coming through. I was almost a stenographer. I'm just typing. And I told it as a story. So there's a little bit like a novel quality to it. When you read it, there's that smooth, engaging, hypnotic writing, if you will. And I'm proud of the book, but also feel like I didn't write it. And I've reread it maybe 3 times. Yeah. So there's a Customer Born Every Minute, Zero Limits, The Attractor Factor. And I mentioned hypnotic writing. I'm very proud of hypnotic writing. That was my very first ebook that later got published and is still in print today. But it also established my career in the marketing world and separated me from the competition. So that's 5 or 6 books out of 85 that come to mind.
Well, that's interesting that you feel like you channeled that book, because the way I write is I sit down and I just say, Spirit, just work through me. I'm your vehicle, and I'll just, and for however long, and I'll look back later and go, did I write that? It's just like, you have to allow it to come through you, and your life purpose flows through your fingers. But I have to say, as much writing as many books as you've done, I bet you were so glad when laptops came out so you didn't have to use a pen and get cramp in your finger writing all the time.
Well, let me tell you a quick story that most people don't know. It might be surprising. So first of all, in the early days, you wrote on paper, the old yellow pad, which I still have yellow pads and I still use yellow pads.
Great.
And then the next level up, given the time period I was in, were typewriters. And I absolutely love the Smith Corona portable electric typewriter I had. The case cover was right over it. You lift it up, there's the keys, and you turn it on and it made that little rumble noise, and which kind of lit me up. I didn't get my first computer until I think 92 or 93, and it was a used beat up computer that somebody gave to me. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, we moved into laptops today, iPhones and all this. But I was with a friend of mine in Florida in 2005, and he had a brand new laptop, and he wanted me to see it. So he put it in front of me, and I started typing, and he said, "No, type like you normally do." And I was typing with two fingers. And he said, "No, go ahead and type." And I said, "No, this is how I type." And he said, "You only type with two fingers?" And I said, "Yeah, I hunt and peck." And he said, "You wrote all of your books with two fingers?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "How much more would you write if you had all fingers working?" I'm like, "I've already written 85 books. How many more do I need to write?" Two fingers work just fine.
Wow. We are talking to one of the greatest known teachers of the law of attraction and spirituality, Dr. Joe Vitale. We're going to wind up here in a little bit. It's just been an amazing, amazing discussion. I'm going to ask one last thing. I really want to know what your Zero Limits program is about that you're currently teaching.
The TV show?
Well, I saw it on your website, so it sounds like you've expanded in a lot of different arms of that.
Yeah, well, there is a lot of different things with Zero Limits, because I think that's where we're going. We want to live at zero, which is the core of Ho'oponopono. My first book, Zero Limits, about Ho'oponopono. I'm entirely moving in that direction of let's question any and all beliefs. So my TV show is called Zero Limits Living. And at this point, it's on every platform you can think of. There's over 1,000 platforms that it's airing it every Friday. So it's on Roku, it's on Amazon Fire, it's on Apple TV, it's on Spotify, and all kind of places. I put up a website, ZeroLimitsLivingTV.com, ZeroLimitsLivingTV.com, and I'm putting all the episodes there. I've only just begun, but what I'm doing is exploring what are our limits and do we actually have any limits? It seems so far that the consensus is we don't have any limits unless you believe that you do. And so that's one thing that I have going. I also have a mentoring program. Zero Limits Mentoring is for people who actually want to open their own business and do things online. And I've got help with my right-hand man, Chuck Pennington, who's running some of that and doing a lot of the technology there. So if somebody has an idea for a product or service, we can help them get their website up. I can help them with their inner beliefs, and so that they are in alignment to get this and achieve success. I have so many things going on, I can't even remember all of them.
Well, you're not bored. That's for sure.
Right.
I have a couple good friends who are in your mastermind program, and they say it's phenomenal. They're so grateful to be into it. And one last thing, how can people connect to you? What is the website you would like people to go to? You have YouTube channels. Can people work one-on-one with you or strictly in groups?
There are ways to work one-on-one with me. I would think, first of all, follow me on Instagram and Facebook, Dr. Joe Vitale, Dr. Joe Vitale, and you'll be inspired every day. I hope that's what my intent is. I would say the website to go to would probably be mrfire.com, MRFIRE.com. MrFire.com has portals to different things. Depending on what you're interested in, just click on it and you'll go in that direction. I have lots of other things, but what's the TV show? ZeroLimitsLivingTV.com. Going to do my best to help right there.
I am definitely going to check that out. Dr. Joe Vitale, what an honor to have you on World Awakenings, a fast track to enlightenment. I'm so grateful. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure. You ask great questions. I love your presence. I love what you're doing. You're helping lots of people. And Godspeed to everybody listening and watching. Thank you.
This has been another episode of World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment with host Carl Gruber, a certified law of attraction life coach. We welcome you to tune in to each and every episode of World Awakenings as we open your mind, your heart, and your eyes to the fact that the world's population is now, more than ever, awakening to the truth of all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening, and just how much they play an all-important role in our moment-to-moment daily life. Much love and light to you, my friend, and thank you for tuning into World Awakenings.